right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today. Nick Walker again responds to the interview of Derek Lunsford. You guys, I'm sure, are all familiar with this by now, but if you're not, Derek did a recent interview talking about the Pittsburgh Pro, where he said he felt like Nick should be thanking him, that he even got the opportunity to stand next to Derek at the Pittsburgh Pro, because then that elevated Nick and the conversation around Nick, in addition to saying essentially he doesn't think Nick can beat him at the Olympia. Now, this beef between Nick and Derek I feel like has been brewing for a while, and it seems like it's really starting to heat up here lately. This is the clip, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more.
You should thank me.
That's our trolling shirt, yeah.
That is the most weirdo type of shit
Yeah.
I've ever heard in my life. And I already said this on my podcast, but like, the dude didn't even sound convincing.
No.
He sounded like he was scared shitless
Yeah,
that he knows what's about to happen.
I think so.
And he just had to come up with something.
Yeah.
He just had to say something.
To try to seem confident.
Yeah.
Or it did not seem confident.
It's like, bro, it's not convincing.
No.
You ain't fucking fooling anyone, brother.
So, I mean, I will say, I don't think that Derek sounded super convincing in the initial clip. But I actually don't think that he sounded scared. And I'm not really taking sides on this one because I've said this before, I think this is a good thing. I like this back and forth. I think that both Nick and Derek are some of the best, most elite level bodybuilders that you're going to find. I've seen a lot of hate for both guys' physiques. Some people just hate Nick's physique. Some people just hate Derek's. But the reality is, these guys are two of the best bodybuilders on the planet, and I don't think anybody can deny that. And I think that's what makes this rivalry so much more fascinating. Because I don't think you can definitively say it's going to go one way or the other. I don't think you can definitively say one guy is that much better than the other. It's not like you've got a 15th place guy at the Olympia calling out Derek and vice versa. Nick and Derek are very close. They're on a very similar playing field. Nick beat Derek at the prejudging of that Pittsburgh Pro. Nick has been top 3 at the Olympia. So seeing two guys like this go back and forth and have this drama and have this beef, I think it makes the Olympia more exciting, especially when you consider the fact that these guys, really it's a coin toss. I wouldn't be surprised if either of these guys placed ahead of the other. So the fact that they're going back and forth, it's not like an unrealistic thing. It's not unrealistic to me that Nick could beat Derek. It's not unrealistic to me that Derek could beat Nick again. And that's what makes it exciting. It really could go either way at the Olympia. At Derek's last Olympia, he was 3rd. At Nick's last Olympia, he was 3rd. The last time Nick and Derek went head-to-head, Nick won prejudging, Derek won finals and won the show. So whether you really like or dislike either of these guys' physiques, it doesn't really matter because the fact is still they are very close. Very close. And I really think that that's part of what makes this so interesting. Now, I'm also going to roll the initial clip of Derek talking about Nick again, and you guys can let me know in the comments below whether or not you think Derek sounded scared here, sounded convincing, and whose side you're on in this back-and-forth rivalry. Who do you think is going to come out on top at the Olympia? Here's the initial clip.
Your buddy Nick Walker thinks he beat you in Pittsburgh.
You know what I was thinking? You know, he should be thanking me for doing the show, actually.
Right.
Because if I didn't do the show, which I was going to do it regardless who showed up. I was hoping that maybe Samson would jump in and other.
Going to jump in New York.
Well, I thought about it, but again, that week was a rough week. But anyhow, he should be thanking me for doing that show, to be honest with you, because, you know, he looked incredible. And for me, just to come off the Arnold win, being an Olympia champion, actually 2-division Olympia champion, all that, coming in just to stand next, you know, to each other is like, hey, that's an opportunity that I gave him, right? And he hasn't been to the Olympia for how many years now? I mean, 2, 3.
Well,
so
almost 3. Yeah,
and then on top of that, it's like I didn't show up at 100%. So that was like door open right there. And yeah, it was arguable. And people were writing off Nick. Nobody should have been writing off Nick. Nobody should have been writing off Nick ever, but they was. And if I hadn't showed up, I don't think there would be the hype now going into the Olympia.
Now, next up in the news, the next show that we have on the IFBB Pro schedule, as far as last-minute qualification opportunities for the Olympia, is the show in Italy, and that is going to be on September 7th. Now, we know that Quinton is now confirmed for that show. These are the latest updates from Quinton after the Texas Pro. Now, the interesting thing about this Italy show is we already have a few names confirmed, and we're going to talk about some of those guys here in a second, but I think this is going to be another good challenge for Quinton. I watched his YouTube vlog today where he said he felt like in Texas he was about 80% to his best. He felt like he was better in Tampa. I still think that, maybe that's true for the overall. Maybe that's true for his overall package in Texas. But I still think when he first walked out at prejudging for Texas, that was his best look. Now, he did kind of fade again. It didn't look the same at finals. And maybe you could say the overall package was worse than Tampa. But I still think when he first walked out at Texas, he looked phenomenal. And that was maybe his best look ever. He just didn't really hold on to that. But he said he's got the feedback from the judges. He now has that on-stage experience of these past two shows where he's really been in the conversation. He was top 2 at Tampa. He was top 2 in Texas up until the finals. So he's been in the mix. He's gotten a lot of conversation, but he's gotten a lot of feedback as well. And the Italy show is not until September 7th. So he's got essentially almost a month to try to focus on improving the things that he's been told to improve. And there's also a show in Germany after Italy, and I believe Quint said he might try to do both. So I think there's a strong possibility that we could see Quinton on the Olympia stage this year, and I hope that we do, because as far as open bodybuilding goes, we're pretty much about done with the conversation of qualifying for the Olympia. Those two shows are the last two shows before the qualification deadline. So actually, let's go ahead and go over and look at the current Olympia qualified competitor list. Best case scenario, there's only going to be 2 more names added to this list. Maybe the same guy wins both the remaining qualifiers, but really this list is not going to change much. There's only 2 more possible names that could be added. So let's look through this list here. I think this is going to be a hell of an Olympia already, but Samson Dauda, Brett Wilkin, Hadi Chupin, Derek Lunsford, Raphael Brandow, Martin Fitzwater, Akeem Williams, Brandon Curry, William Bonac, Good Vito, Andrew Jacked, Nick Walker, Regan Grimes, Tonio Burton, Sas Harati, Behruz Tabani, Shenlong Shen, Rubiel Mosquera, a.k.a. Nexzilla, Jordan Hutchinson, and Dorian Haywood. So I wanted to make sure I included this list because this is something I actually was not sure of until I checked the list. The winner of the Masters Olympia does, in fact, qualify for the Open Olympia. I wasn't 100% sure on that because it's technically a Masters show, and typically the winner of a Masters show does not qualify for an Open Olympia. But Dorian Haywood won the Masters Olympia. He is qualified for the Open Olympia. So a couple things I want to talk about here. Before we get into the other potential competitors in these final 2 shows of the year, the potential final 2 names added to this list, let's talk a little bit more about the Masters Olympia here because this has become a really interesting talking point. I talked to Phil right after the show. Phil Klahar, who was seemingly winning the prejudging. Actually, not seemingly. He was dominantly winning the prejudging, and that was even reflected on the scorecards. So we now have photos because the live stream was really bad. Let's be honest. The live stream was bad. The backdrop was bad. The lighting was bad. We now have actual photos from prejudging, so we can get a better idea of how these guys looked at the prejudging. So we're going to look at these pictures. Unfortunately, there were not pictures of finals, which is what I really wanted to see for comparative purposes, because the difference in this show was the difference between prejudging and finals. So we're going to look at the prejudging pictures that we now have and then look at the finals video that we also have. Because here's the thing. Phil Klahar was winning prejudging with a score of 6. Dorian Haywood had 14, so Phil was 8 points ahead of Dorian. A very, very significant lead. And Dorian wasn't even second at prejudging. Domenico Intermaggio was with 11, and Phil even still had a score of 5 points ahead of him. So a very commanding lead at prejudging. You look at these pictures, that's how I had it. That's how I saw it. Even with the crappy live stream for prejudging, you look at these pictures, I'm giving Phil the front lat spread. I'm giving Phil the most muscular. I'm giving Phil both back poses. There's 4 poses right there. I think Phil's weakest pose is probably the abs and thighs, so give the abs and thighs to either of the other two guys. Take that pose away. I would also give Phil the front double, the side chest. Now Phil has 6 poses. Give the side tricep to any of the other two guys. Give it to Dorian. I do think that Phil is a little bit light in the triceps. He's a little bit light in the lower body. So for that reason, and his midsection isn't the prettiest. So for that reason, you could give the abs and thighs and the side tricep to either of the other two guys. But from the back, he's extremely strong. He's extremely dominant. I think when you're looking at these prejudging photos, he's much more conditioned than Dorian. Don't get me wrong. Dorian is a good bodybuilder. This is not to shit on Dorian here. This is not to say Dorian didn't deserve the victory. Dorian had a ton of muscle. He was thick. He was dense. He was full. But if you look at these prejudging pictures, I think that Dorian was pretty soft. I don't think the conditioning was there. And if you look at Phil, you see a lot more detail in the side leg, in the side shots. Even though Dorian looks thick in those shots, you look at the back shots, which are, I think, Phil's bread and butter. Even though Phil is a little bit light in the lower body and Dorian is pretty heavy in the lower body, Phil's back shots, I think he takes both of those. Much more detail in the upper back, much more width, much more size, ton of detail. Maybe not the same size in the lower body, but to me, I think Dorian looks pretty soft in the lower body from the back. So I would give Phil both back shots. And the most muscular, you can see a lot more detail in Phil's chest, a lot more striations in the shoulders and the arms. So I would give Phil the most muscular. Front lat spread, I think Phil has a better shape. I would give him that pose. And I think he's in better condition in that pose. And I know I'm not necessarily showing these poses in order as I talk about them. I'm just showing a ton of pictures from the prejudging of all the poses. But let me know how you guys would have these poses broken down just based on these pictures, because I'm showing multiple of every pose. But now let's look at the finals video. Again, we didn't have pictures, or at least I have not seen yet pictures from the finals where you have a better HD visual of what they looked like at the finals, even though I think the background and the lighting was slightly better for the finals in the video. I would like to be able to compare picture to picture prejudging to finals, because that is the discrepancy here. So before we do that, let's look at the scorecard again, because this is the important part of the show. And I'm seeing, in the aftermath of this Masters Olympia, I'm seeing a lot of people talking about the Masters results. And even before I looked at the men's open bodybuilding stuff, and you guys can look into this too. I'm not going to go too deep into it in this video, but look at the 212. There's a lot of controversy with the 212 results at the Masters Olympia too, but this is the big thing here with open. Is I can't remember the last time that I saw a point swing like this. Dorian Haywood in 3rd place at prejudging with a score of 14 gets a perfect score in finals. A score of 5. So again, what we're talking about here when we're talking about scoring, when you say a score of 5, we're operating off the scores of 5 judges. That would be a perfect score. So 5 judges give Dorian number 1. That's what gives him the score of 5. First place, number 1, each judge times 5. That's how the breakdown works. So Phil Klahar at prejudging, even though he had a commanding lead, it looks like he had 1 vote for second because he had a score of 6. So it looks like he had 4 judges that had him in first and 1 judge that had him in second. So a pretty good score, pretty commanding lead. And it looks like it would be 4 judges had Dorian in 3rd at prejudging and 1 had him in second. So I don't think anybody had him in first. So this is where the controversy comes in. So let's say, look at this video, watch, this is the finals video here. I do agree that Dorian improved from prejudging to finals. So let's say, just right off the bat, let's say he was much tighter, much more conditioned. Let's just say that he was, even if you don't agree with that. Let's give him his perfect score of 5. Even if it seems unrealistic to you, even if you don't agree, give him the perfect score of 5 at the finals. That would still put him with a total of 19 points. So the interesting thing to me is that I watched this finals video. I don't think Phil looks worse than he looked at prejudging. But if you gave Dorian the perfect score of 5, you would have to, worst case scenario, give Phil a score of 10, which would mean every judge has Phil now in second. So let's say Dorian got that much better. Phil didn't change at all. He's now in second. He would have a score of 10, which would put him with a final score of 16. He would still win the show. Because obviously, if Dorian is getting all the first place votes. Phil isn't going to have any. So best case, I guess it would be best case scenario, he'd have a score of 10. But I think that's where this gets controversial, because I don't think that Phil got worse for the finals. I've watched this video maybe 10 times now, and now I've watched it in the context of the other pictures. To me, he looks like he held the same look that he had at prejudging. But the fact that he dropped to third in the finals is the only way that he could have lost his show, and I think that's what makes it suspicious to some people, because even if you give Dorian this massive improvement like we've never seen before. Like, I can't remember the last time we saw a 9-point improvement in a bodybuilding show from third to first. But even if you give Dorian that, it's not enough for him to win the show. The judges have to also say Phil is significantly worse here. Not even second, but third, for Phil to then lose the show. And that I don't necessarily see here. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below about the results of the Open Masters Olympia. But I am going to show you guys actually the 212 controversy, or at least a little peek of it. So this was a post by Bodybuilders Without Borders that it seemed like a lot of people agreed with. These are the 212 guys. So Hidetada Yamagishi did not win. He was second. Samir Trudy won, and I actually thought Samir Trudy looked pretty good. But look at Hidetada, who was second. He is the middle top row from the front and the back. I don't agree with that either. Hide was a legend in his day, in his prime. He brings really good condition, and he still brings really good condition. But you look at some of these other guys that placed behind Hide. Hide's arms, I saw this comment too. Someone used the word melted, and I agree with that. His arms and his back, they look melted. The muscle is just not there anymore. He's in pretty good condition, but the muscle's just gone. It's not there. Especially when you look at the back poses, you could argue that Hide looks the worst out of all 6 of these guys from the back. So I think when you look at the 212 situation, and I believe the caption, I'll read the caption here on this Bodybuilders Without Borders post. Masters Olympia official results smell like week-old sushi. I'm just a reporter, no disrespect to the legends. Did they honor the big names and legacies, or instead of the physiques? Check out the picks, 212, top 6 from left to right, top to bottom, no comment. And I would say the biggest thing was the guy in the bottom left corner, the number 85, which would be Douglas Connor. I think the biggest comment that I saw the most was that he was robbed. And when you look at these comparison photos, I think it's hard not to agree with that. And I will say that's what makes this Masters Olympia so interesting is I believe that robberies do happen in bodybuilding. I believe that politics do play a factor in bodybuilding. I just think that it's rare. I think the term robbery is thrown around too loosely. I think the term politics is thrown around too loosely. But at a show like this where you have 2, I think both of these were pretty controversial results. And I think, this is a bit of a stretch, I think, but Phil did make some waves, calling out a decision. Last year's Tampa Pro, where he was 16th, and he made a lot of noise with that, and I think that is kind of the conspiracy theory, is that maybe he pissed people off questioning the judging there, and this was his punishment, saying, we can't let this guy win. And I'm a little bit more hesitant now to say that a bodybuilding show was a robbery, because honestly, I've watched hundreds of bodybuilding shows, probably over 1,000 at this point, live or the streams. And probably of those, let's say 1,000 plus, maybe 10 to 20 I've considered to be like an actual robbery. So we're talking about 1.1 to 2% of all the shows that I've seen seemed like an actual robbery. I don't think it happens that often. But with something like this, with that big of a point swing, and then both these categories, 212 and open, being kind of disputed, I might be willing to add this one to the list with an asterisk that this was a suspicious circumstance with this result. Especially, that point swing. We don't see scorecards like that almost ever from third to first. Because, again, to go from third to first, you also have to have the guy that was in first at prejudging get way worse. So it's already rare enough that somebody would get that much better from prejudging to finals that they would get a perfect score for first. But for the guy that was in first at prejudging to also have gotten exactly worse enough to lose, that's like the stars aligning perfectly, does not happen almost ever. And I would even say, like, of the past, I guess it's been like 15 years that I've been following bodybuilding and watching most of the shows, if not every show. It seems like there's really only about one, maybe two shows per year that's in the questionable category. Like, the result is pretty sus. I think this is the show for this year. Because like I said, I can maybe see, if we're being very generous, how they got Dorian from third to first. He did look improved. Looking at the pictures, looking at the video, he definitely got tighter. But what I don't see is Phil Klahar getting worse to the point where they have him in third at finals, which would be the only way to keep him from winning the show. I don't know about you guys, but Phil looks the same from finals to prejudging to finals based on what I'm seeing here. Now, next up in the news, let's talk more about this show that Quinton is doing, the Italy show. Sergio Oliva Jr. is another guy that's doing that show. Sergio is back trying to get that Olympia qualification after kind of a lackluster showing at the FIBO show. And these are the latest physique updates from Sergio as he tries to get that last-minute 2025 Olympia qualification. So, to be fair, I mean, Quinton is going to have a battle on his hands. This is not going to be an easy walk-in-the-park win for him going to Italy. He's going to have some guys that are going to challenge him, and I think Sergio is certainly one of those guys. Sergio, at this point, is kind of a veteran pro. He's been around for a long time, and I don't think that he's going to be an easy guy for Quinton to beat. And he's also somebody that has struggled a little bit with conditioning. So I think the good thing about these final two shows of the year is it looks like we're going to see some actual pretty competitive battles of guys that you could argue belong on that Olympia stage. I think Quinton belongs there. I think you can make that argument for Sergio. These are not like, I wouldn't even say these are B-tier pros. I think Sergio and Quinton are both, for me, A-tier pros. I think they belong in that grouping. And another guy doing this show, I just got a DM from him the other day, Marc Hector. I've been following him for a long time. He's another guy who I love his physique, very aesthetically pleasing. He's a bodybuilder out of the UK. He's also doing Italy. Like I said, I really like this guy's physique. Very, very nice flow, pretty good size. I think he's kind of in a category like Quinton, where he's more aesthetically pleasing than he is dense. But he's another guy that I would really like to see on that Olympia stage. He's going to be competing, and I think he's probably going to do more than just that show. He's probably going to do most of, or a couple of, the European shows. But Marc Hector is a guy that I've been impressed with for a few years now, and he's also going to be in that Italy show. So we're going to have a battle. I think Louis Breed is doing it as well. So these last-minute Olympia spots are not going to go lightly. And I think finally, I wanted to show, for the final story, I wanted to show the video of Jordan Hutchinson from the Texas Pro. Because we talked a lot about Quinton. We talked a lot about the guys that didn't win the show. But Jordan deserves some praise in his own right. Jordan has now won back-to-back pro shows, Tampa and Texas, qualified for his first ever Olympia. This will be his Olympia debut. Jay Cutler on the Cutler Cast says that he thinks Jordan is a threat for the top 4 at the Olympia. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. I do think that he's probably a lock for top 10, and I think he's got a shot at the first call-out. I think top 4 is probably a little bit generous for his first Olympia outing. I think he definitely needs to add some more density to his back. But conditioning-wise, you can make a strong argument for Jordan doing well in the top 10 at the Olympia. I think he will be top 10. You know, you look at this Texas Pro lineup, and you look at the second and third call-out, and I saw a lot of people saying this in the comment section. That lineup was so deep, 26 competitors, and it was good. It was deep and good. And you look at that second and third call-out, and you could make an argument that those would be the first call-out at a smaller show. Those call-outs were so good, so that speaks to how competitive the first call-out was in Texas, which Jordan won, and also won Tampa. And you look at the fact that Jordan is winning, I think, off of conditioning. He's not the most aesthetically pleasing guy. He's got some weak points when it comes to size, but he is consistent, and he is consistently head-to-toe conditioned. He comes into prejudging head-to-toe peeled, comes into finals head to toe peeled. That's the type of guy at the Olympia that can catch a lot of people slipping. And that's what makes him so dangerous. And winning 2 shows back-to-back is not something that we have seen a lot of guys do in 2025. That's a really big feather in Jordan's cap. I mean, the only guy that comes to mind right off the bat that has done that this year is Derek, winning the Arnold and the Pittsburgh back-to-back. And I guess Rubiel, Nexzilla, I guess he did win 2 shows as well. But the number of guys that win 2 shows within a given year is not very many. So it puts Jordan in a little bit of a different category. So I do agree with Jay in the sense that I think he's going to be a threat at the Olympia. I think he will be top 10. Possibly first call out, but I do think that top 4 is a bit of a stretch. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. That's going to wrap it up for the video today, guys. I hope you did, in fact, enjoy it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.